I had a vision when I was 12, and I saw a man on a flaming pie, and he said, "You are Beatles with an A," and we are.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles!
One, two, three.
And now,
The Beatles Anthology
revisited. It's a joke in the family. Guitar's all right for a hobby, but it won't earn you any money.
I mean, at one point in time, we did take jobs. It was embarrassing when people were always saying, you know, your relatives and people, why don't you get a job?
My dad originally thought, naturally, you know, it was an obvious thing to think, I think. He just said, well, you're never going to make any money being in a group. And you may be enjoying yourself, but you've still got to have some money to help you live, you know. So he said, get a job and do it in your spare time.
I'd made my decision. I want to be a musician, right? I'm going to just play in bands. But of course, the whole family has a say in it. In Liverpool, it's a very family-ish thing, though I've only had my mother and stepfather. I had a lot of uncles and aunties and grandparents, and they all sat round the table and we discussed it, you know, and now they said, "Oh, keep your trade, son, keep your trade. You know, drumming's all right as a laugh, you know, but it's
a hobby.
It is a hobby, but how long will it last?"
Yeah, Paul and I used to just kind of get together, played a bit, but we were just schoolboys then. There was no groups involved till a little bit later.
When I was 18, I got my first kit.
And how old were you when you were actually playing in a band?
1 month later.
After you got the kit?
Yeah, because I was really lucky, because in those days, if you had the instrument, you were in the band, and because it was skiffle, so it was real easy. So that's how the guy next door, it was called Eddie Miles, but we formed the Eddie Clayton Skiffle group, and he was the guitarist, and my best friend Roy Trafford was the other guitarist, and we got another guy on T-chest bass, and we just went out there and played. I left that band, joined another skiffle group, and then I joined a rock and roll band called Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, and we were still sort of folky rock. And then it started, we just went from there, and everyone got amplifiers, of course, and we were off.
They had all these other people who didn't seem to be doing anything, so somehow we managed to get rid of them. So there was only really left was just John, Paul and I.
We used to show up for gigs with just 3 guitars, and the person booking us would say, "Where's the drums then?" And to cover this eventuality, we say, "The rhythm's in the guitars." Sit there and smile a lot and bluff it out, you know, go, "Oh, there was not a lot you could say to that, you know. Rhythm's in the guitars." And then we just really try and make them very rhythmic to prove our point.
That'll be the day when I die.
We once tried to do this audition for Carol Levis. There was this guy, Carol Levis Discoveries, and he, I think, must have been a con man, because nobody ever won. You just kept going on and on and on, and he had all these free talent, you see. He sold tickets to the theatres, and had all these free artists coming on. And at the end of the show, the clapometer would tell you who'd won, and you'd come back next week and go into another one. We just did one of those in Manchester.
The Ardwick Empire in Manchester, where, and I remember going on the train from Liverpool and rehearsing what we were going to do. And John didn't have a guitar for some reason. He probably sold it or busted it or something, I don't know. But George and I had ours.
Okay, there's just the two of us with the guitars, and as it happened, it looked good because Paul was like left-handed and I was right-handed, and still am. And John was in the middle, and like John stood there with a hand on each shoulder, you know, think it over what you just said.
Ba, ba, ba. Me and George, John would do the lead. So John thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll put an arm around each of you.
And Paul and I, with our guitars, one this way, one that way, doing the backup voices. That was Johnny and the Moondogs.
And we did Think It Over. Think it over. Me and George. Only in the same key. And then we did Rave On. So we went, we did it. He put his arms around us and stuff, and it was okay. We didn't